Dan, thanks for joining us. We're with the EOS Go, and this is myself and Kevin. I'm Bluejays, and here's Dan Larimer. Dan, yeah, you're welcome. Dan, so smart contracts are sort of a new type of entity within this sort of cryptography space. A lot of people point at the fact that how are we going to trust these smart contracts to do things that people normally did in back offices and with paper and all of these different trust mechanisms. That requires software that's formally verified through things like audits. How do you design for auditing within your software engineering discipline going forward with use cases built on EOS?
Well, auditing software is a very, very challenging project for anything that's non-trivial. As soon as you change anything, the whole process needs to start all over. What we take is the approach of being able to heal when things go bad. Building smart contracts is like automating the back office. It's automating the accounting. And usually the intention of what people expected to happen is pretty clear. And so if a smart contract breaks, that's kind of like an assembly line robot breaking. And well, what do? You fix the robot and you get production back to where you're going. I believe that blockchains are a tool to enable humans to reach consensus faster. It's not a tool to replace human thinking from the process, or to have us be ruled over by some artificially intelligent overlords. The smart contracts are created by people, and we need them to be able to adapt to changing situations. It's the ability to change and evolve that defines the most fit. Because competition's constantly changing. Nothing's ever static. And smart contracts written by people are static. So unless they're very, very simple use cases, such as a currency, then you need the ability to change things to fix things when they go wrong. So what we're doing with EOS is we're trying to capture the idea that the blockchain is a tool for a community to reach consensus over who owns what. The important thing is the property right, the idea of who owns what. And if I took $1 out of my pocket and put it on the table, it's still mine. If you have the ability to take it, that doesn't make it yours. But with cryptocurrency, I put my private key on the table. You can take it, now it's yours, but there's no recourse. So everything we're designing around EOS is flexibility of multiple parties working together to respect each other's property rights, to have accountability, transparency, and to prevent things like the DAO or the multi-sig contract hack or the multi-sig contract being frozen. All those things are an example of what happens when you have an inflexible system. So rather than saying we're going to write perfect code, we say we're going to create a system that allows us to heal when bugs are found in imperfect code. And so that we're ready for the imperfect code and we're ready for the bugs, and they won't be catastrophic for the EOS platform, whereas on Ethereum, a bug is catastrophic.
In your experience, Dan, and thank you for agreeing to this interview, we believe this might be the first time you've ever had an EOS interview from people who are in your community. So thank you for agreeing to this. We are looking to ask some questions for the community and get some answers. You're sort of handing us the keys to this incredible, possible world-changing software. And we are curious, in your experience from previous implementation, BitShares and Steem, what do we need to know as a community to come together and get this blockchain going?
All right. Well, as you know, block.one won't be launching the blockchain. And so it is up to the community to take the free software that we're offering and set up nodes and start running it. And so there's a lot of financial incentive for everyone to cooperate to do so. because there might be many competing chains, but the one that has the most consensus, the most value, most vested interest, basically the ones that supports the distribution that exists, is likely to have the most buy-in. So most projects will say, trust us, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And we actually say, no, don't trust us, trust everyone. Right? And it's sort of a leap of faith. We're trusting you, you're trusting us, we're giving our software away. And it's a very giving system. So being a block producer is a technical position, but it's also a political position. You have to have buy-in from the community. And like all political systems, the incumbent does have some advantage. So the incentive is for 21 people to get together and work out amongst themselves, hey, we're going to be the initial block producers. We're going to configure a blockchain and launch it. And you're going to have the advantage when it comes to gathering votes from users. And block producers stand to make a lot of money, because if you had a blockchain worth $100 billion like Ethereum, the 20 block producers, even if they take just 1% of the inflation, are looking at $1 billion, $1 billion, 1% of 100 million. $1 billion a year divided by 20 people is $50 million per producer. And that's a lot of money to operate a network. There's a lot of profit opportunity there. There's a lot of influence and prestige that comes along with being a block producer. You have more direct control. And in many cases, the ideal candidates for block producers would be exchanges or block explorers, or somebody who's already running a full node anyway, because the delta cost is zero. So you can capitalize on the trust that you have from your other businesses to monetize it. So why is the community going to come together? Because there's so much incentive to be in there on the first one that you want to find other people. And if you can find 20 people and you get the best 20 people and work it out amongst yourselves, then you'll have a very decentralized initial core group of people that are starting the blockchain. And it's coming from the community, not us. And that's a big part of everything we're doing.
Speaking of block producers, is there anything built within EOS that will help us give metrics to the type of quality of block producers there are out there, as well as voting? How are communities or users of blockchains see voting for their block producer as something that they're incentivized to do?
Well, the biggest mistake you can do with voting is pay people to vote. Because you get what you pay for. And in that case, you're not paying for people to evaluate something, you're paying for them to cast a vote. So they'll cast a vote without evaluation just so they can get paid. There's no way to pay someone to make a smart vote, because there's no way to evaluate the definition of a smart vote. So we're doing several things with voting designed to make sure that votes are highest quality possible. And one of the first things is we're decaying votes. And we're doing that by making newer votes worth more than older votes with a half-life of 6 months. So every 6 months, if you update your vote, your vote carries maximum weight. If you sit idle and you don't update your vote, those who do will have twice the influence for the same stake that you did. And the third thing we're doing to incentivize voting is really not incentivizing voting from the users, but incentivizing campaigning on the producers. Is that producers will get paid a fixed amount per block, but also a dynamic amount proportional to the number of votes that they have. So unless you're the #1 block producer, even if you are the #1 block producer, there's always incentive to get out the vote. And so you're always campaigning, you're always trying to raise awareness. And that combination of incentives, we believe, will prevent the incumbents from having to sit back and just rely on the votes that somebody cast a year ago and forgot about, which is some of the problem we've had on other platforms. And because of the financial incentive to campaign, you're going to have people going to see it brought up, ads on wallets and block explorers, and everyone's going to say, hey, vote for me, this is what I'm doing. And that's going to make people more aware of the need to vote and who these people are. because of the incentives of moving up on the votes.
This leads into the standby block producer play as well.
So you don't have to be in the top 20 in order to get paid just for having votes.
Will there be a number of block producers per geographic region?
The block producers can advertise many different characteristics to get votes. Being geographically and politically diverse, as well as technologically diverse, the different data centers, not everyone's in Amazon, will allow one block producer to stand out from everyone else. So all those things factor into campaign points for why you should vote for them. And then you can look at their performance in terms of, well, how much RAM do they claim they have? How many transactions per second do they claim to support? What hardware are they running? Are they being active in the governance of the blockchain as well as the technical production of blocks? And is block producer doing anything else with the money they're receiving? Are they funding education? Are they funding more advanced scalability? Are they innovating in how they're providing redundancy? So there's all kinds of things a block producer can do to enhance their the amount of value they're providing for what the people are paying.
With your experience with steemit and BitShares, what are some of the more pragmatic issues that when a voter is selecting a block producer or a witness that you've seen as opposed to the ones that maybe the community thinks is important?
The biggest challenge with all the block producers is it's politics, and so sometimes people vote on emotional issues rather than and for vengeance or whatnot rather than on maybe what's best for the network. I'm not sure exactly how we can solve all the inherent challenges because there's all voting systems suffer from rational ignorance, where the value of me educating myself to vote wisely, or the cost of me educating myself is greater than the value I receive from my vote, which largely means the larger stake you have, the more it makes sense to research your vote. But in the smaller, long tail of people, it actually makes more sense to delegate your vote to someone you trust. And then that one person can do the research. So we added proxy voting in BitShares. Steam has it. EOS will have it as well. And I would generally encourage the vast majority of token holders to, if you're not going to research the issues, delegate to someone who will, who you trust.
I guess it's up to the community at large to come up with a set of parameters and criteria that make a good block producer as well.
It's up to the block producers too. There's financial incentive to get more votes, which means each block producer is going to say, hey, I'm better than everyone else because X, Y, and Z. There's financial incentive to say, hey, this other block producer is not doing their job, or they're not, so all that extra incentive to constantly compete for votes. But then once you have the votes, to cooperate to make sure that no one's missing blocks.
Okay.
Whereas other systems, people are competing to produce the block, which means that any bickering, any political bickering, shows up in degradation of performance. And you see that with Bitcoin miners throwing their hash power in different places and that impacting the network. We want to keep the political bickering away from the real-time operation of the network.
I know that and block producing is just the most obvious job in this new sort of economy that you're creating, which will have all the incentives aligned in a perfect circle. It seems to be what you guys are approaching or attempting to do, and very well so far. What other type of jobs do you see on the blockchain? Arbitration, app developers, what do you see?
Well, it's a new virtual economy, a new virtual country, if you will. And so every business has an opportunity to set up. Arbitration's a great example. And we'll be providing tools to facilitate arbitration processes on the blockchain. But yeah, there's going to be lots of need for technical support. I could actually see a separation between a technical block producer, someone who owns and operates the hardware, and the person who's politically in charge. So that you can change political control without changing the IT guy who's running the node, which will facilitate moving people in and out without disrupting the network or without requiring someone to speculatively build up a huge data center. Instead, you just transfer control of the data center to a new person. And that's a lot of specialization and ultimately a lot of flexibility. And it's a free market, so I don't know all the great ideas that the community is going to come up with.
I just want to change gears a little bit. We can come back to a block producer question if you'd like. I want to talk about inflation and the concept of inflation. It's something that I think the community probably has a difficulty wrapping their head around in terms of why is inflation good for a particular token. So is there a simple metaphor that we can use to illustrate that concept of inflation?
Sure. I firmly believe no one should get something for nothing. And people that are adding value, public goods, so a block producer is doing work that everyone benefits from, so everyone should pay for. You shouldn't expect block producers to volunteer, and you shouldn't expect any minority to have to fund the block producer. And so you are creating new tokens in exchange for capital or value being provided to the network. And so it's an even exchange between the token holders and the people providing work. And it really solves the dilemma of, well, who funds development of Bitcoin? Who funds the development of these other systems? BitShares struggled because it originally had no inflation. Then, all right, what happens when the money's gone? Who's going to fund development? And so with Steem, if you ended inflation, the entire incentive system breaks down, because who's going to produce content without the incentive? And maybe you'll operate on like other social networks or Reddit, where it's just all voluntary, but you lose a powerful dynamic when you stop compensating people for producing public goods. And so that's where the inflation is ideal. I actually believe that you could end all taxation around the world if every government had transparent accounting on the money supply, and they were allocated a fixed % inflation. And now the incentives with the people and the government are aligned. Government wants to maximize the value of the currency so they can maximize the purchasing power of the allotted inflation. It grows with GDP, because as GDP grows, everything's in alignment. You don't have to do all the accounting, invade people's privacy, audit everyone, and you save all the billions of dollars that are wasted just in enforcement. So I really believe that inflation is the way that governments, accountable inflation, is the way that governments and communities can organize themselves and fund all the public benefits that you would expect.
Well, that sounds fairly similar to the way you guys just did the Everpedia token drop for EOS holders. You're trying to increase the value of the token for the EOS holders.
Yeah, we didn't do that token drop. That was Everpedia doing the token drop, but yes.
Sure. Is that something that's strongly encouraged in the future for developers who are making dApps for EOS?
Doing token drops and giving away tokens is a great way to build a community. Having a diverse distribution like the EOS distribution list is a great way to start. And then using inflation to allow that community to allocate and reward additional contributions is a potentially new way to bypass a lot of the regulatory constraints around taking money for things. As far as I know, there's no regulations that impact giving things away yet. Yeah. So the question was, if someone figures out I don't think most cryptographic operations are going to break overnight. Usually what happens is people weaken them until the point that they can be brute forced. We've already support a modular public key system. So we support two curves, both the Bitcoin curve as well as the R1 curve used by Apple ID and their secure enclave, which the entire system is set up so we can add additional curves or additional signature methods and verification processes, as long as they're similar enough in structure to how the curves work. So if that happened, everyone would just update their account permissions with the new key structure. Because everything's public, you don't have to worry about things being cracked for like privacy reasons, which is the biggest issue with all the privacy protocols out there. Is eventually they will be cracked, and if you were relying on them being private forever, it might come back to haunt you one day. Whereas everything's public, so it's not just a matter of authentication. And once we reach consensus over what the new key is, then the old key being cracked no longer matters to anyone. So yes, the system can be upgraded. It would require a hard fork, but it would be a relatively smooth hard fork. Thank you for coming out here and all the work you're doing with EOS Go to get the community going. It makes me very happy and proud to see everything that's just spawning spontaneously out there. So it's really exciting to see what you guys are going to bring. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you.